A to the K.
to the K.
To the K.
Hello, one and all. Welcome to the A to the K Wrestling Show, where today we are joined by a legendary announcer whose voice was a staple of the WWE Golden Era, the one and only Sean Mooney. Sean, thanks so much for being here, man. How are you?
Great. Kyle and Anthony, how are you? Great to see you from across the pond. I'm way over in Arizona.
It's probably a lot better weather conditions here. A lot of snow and rain here at the moment.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. It is very nice here. I won't brag. I won't go on and tell you exactly how nice it is, but it's a reason we live here.
That's
Yes, indeed.
Well, speaking of across the pond, we might as well kick off if we could. Obviously, you're coming over to the UK on the 15th and 16th of February for the Love of Wrestling. Sorry. So wondered if you could sort of speak to us about sort of how it feels to sort of reconnect with your fans over in the UK, and are there any of your older colleagues who you're particularly looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I'd like to start just by saying how thrilled I am to come back to the UK. It has been a long time. I have not been over there, I think, since the last time with when we were there for SummerSlam, and Lord Alfred Hayes and I made a couple of trips across there to see everybody and be a part of those events. And I was absolutely blown away by the reception that we received when we were there. It made a lot of sense because it was, as the WWE, of course, now has gone really worldwide. Yeah. It originally was called the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, but it really was just in its infancy there of going international. And of course, they started in the UK on Sky TV, Sky Television. Yep. And of course, everybody got to see the Coliseum home videos that I was privileged to host. And that was pretty much the way people were introduced to the WWE, as we call it now. But I really did not expect the type of reception that we did receive. I mean, I was well known in the States at the time for doing the event center and, of course, the backstage interviews, and had done the Coliseum videos. But I didn't realize the impact that we were having over there, for one thing. And then I also didn't realize that there was very limited ways to see what we were doing. And also, of course, Lord Alfred and I did a lot of the play-by-play because they kept the teams different. They wanted it to be a different, international team, so that people knew that that was important to them, that they had an announced team that was devoted to them. So Bobby and Gorilla and Jesse and Vince did a lot of the matches here, but it was Alfred and I that did a lot of the commentary for the matches that people saw over there. So when I went over, I wasn't really expecting that. And man, I was used to seeing the other guys treated like rock stars over there, because, they had, of course, they were superstars. But when I went over there, and I remember we were at a hotel, and as you guys have been to many of these events, hundreds of people gather outside, and it's just for the opportunity. Maybe they're going to see somebody coming in and out, however it's going to work. And we were there one night sitting in a bar area that had been roped off, basically, and a bunch of people were let in to be able to come up to this area. And I had no idea, just how many people there were out there. And they just came flooding in. And I remember, I think I was there with Gene, and Bobby was there, and Gino, Gorilla, and a few other guys. And they came rushing up there, and I'm like, okay, here we go, man. They're going to be all over the guys. And a big majority of them came over to me, and it's the lad. And I was like, what the heck's going on? I figured, they loved Alfred because Alfred was from the UK. But I was just blown away by it. And it started the love affair then with me and the wrestling fans in the UK. And it has gone on to this day. I still get mail. I'm a newsreader here. And so I work at a TV station, and if you get on the internet, you can pretty much track me down. And I get mail there all the time. And a lot of times it's from the UK that they send it over, and they send those. I didn't have an action figure then, but I do now. But, you've seen those cards they have. They're the baseball cards that we had. And I still get those today. I don't know where people find them, if they had an old collection that they found, but they send them to me. And I figure they track me down, then I owe them at least the pleasure of returning that. And they'll send it with a self-addressed envelope, and I sign these and send them back to them. This has gone on. Well, I left in '93 from the WWE, and now it's all these years later. So going back a long story longer as I went on here is a big thrill for me because I haven't been there. I haven't done a show. I was going to go I was invited before the pandemic, and then of course everything fell apart and that trip went away. And the fact that the folks with For the Love of Wrestling got in contact with me and are bringing me over, I couldn't be more thrilled with doing it. And I can't wait to get there. And I'm looking really forward to seeing a lot of the guys that I worked with. Ric Flair is going to be there, and Lex Luger, and Sting, and Jake Roberts, and I mean, just so many. They have a tremendous lineup, so it's going to be a great event, and I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few WhatsApp groups and stuff that we're in. Everyone's super excited. Obviously, a lot of people excited to see you as well. Obviously, we grew up with you, as you say, as our kind of commentator. So yeah, a lot of people looking forward to that. You touched on SummerSlam '92, obviously Wembley Stadium, Bret Hart, British Bulldog. It was massive for us here in the UK, and I think you were a super pivotal part of that. Obviously, having the interview with Davey and also Diana in the crowd. What were your memories from like the spectacle of SummerSlam '92?
Well, you can go back, and I haven't done a lot of interviews over the years, but when people always ask me what was my favorite event, I'm not saying this just because, your podcast and where it's located geographically, but 92, that SummerSlam remains the greatest event that I ever had the chance to be a part of. And for so many reasons, I touched on it before, the fact that it really was the first big international event we did. We had been over there with other events, but this was gigantic. And of course, Wembley Stadium, my God, where else could you want to do it? Nearly 80,000. That's been, maybe it's less, maybe it was more. You hear people talk about that, but come on, 80,000 people were there. There was so much involved in that event between, it was supposed to be the main event with Randy and the Warrior, but everybody there was talking. We knew what the real main event was. It was Bret Hart, Bret the Hitman, and of course, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. And the drama, the real life drama, it wasn't just a great storyline as it was. I mean, the fact that, family members and the whole thing, but there was a lot of drama going on that summer prior to the match. And I have done interviews with Bret since. I did a StarCast event with him where we had him on, and I actually had a chance to talk to him about that summer, and also had talked to him before. But he, honest to God, as he tells the story, he really didn't know what was going on with Davey Boy at the time. And if people who are students and have really studied Bret Hart, are big fans of his, they know how meticulous he was about his matches. He would have legal pads of just notes and how everything was going to go. And of course, he mapped out this match with Davey Boy and tried to contact him prior to it. But there was a lot happening with Davey Boy Smith that's still a mystery today, what exactly the whole story was. I've interviewed Diana since, and I have gotten to know Harry very well over the years, and we've talked about it. But nobody really knew what was going on. Davey Boy reportedly had a staph infection in his knee. There were all these rumors about drug use, and I mean, just so many things going on. Nobody really knew. And honestly, nobody knew if he was going to show up for that match, if he was even going to show up to England. And he did. And as Bret tells the story, when they went out in the ring and they locked up and they started the match, he says that Davey Boy turned to him and said, "I'm fucked." Because he tried to talk to him about the match beforehand and kind of went over it, and said, "I'm fucked." That's Bret's side. Diana tells a different story. She says, "I don't, Davey Boy would never go into a match that way." But if you watch that match, and I have tried a few, you look, and those who are know how matches work and everything, and you'll see once in a while the guys get next to each other there, and might be a little exchange of words there. But come on, that match was phenomenal, and I've looked, and I don't see any major slips that Davey had in that match. So whether it was just muscle memory, and we know when you know how to dance with somebody, and these two knew each other very well, it goes together. I happen to think it was some divine intervention that was involved as well, because it turned out to be one of the greatest matches ever. If folks will recall from that event, I interviewed Diana in the stands. She was really emotional, and that was not a work. She was really emotional because, as I just explained, everything that was happening, and she didn't know how this was going to play out. The last thing they wanted was for either of them to be humiliated in the ring. And it turned out to be one of the greatest matches, and that's my personal opinion. But for all those reasons, and I remember when they were in the ring when it was over, and I was emotional at ringside. Everybody in the back was emotional because of what they pulled off, and it was that culmination, and it happened, and it was magic. And so for me, that stands out to this day as just one of the greatest events, one of the greatest matches that I ever witnessed. So it was for a number of reasons that I love that. And then everything that was surrounding it. Lord Alfred Hayes and I, as if people know, Lord Alfred and I were very, very close friends. And we got turned loose in London and got to shoot all of these wraparounds for Coliseum Home Video. They had us dressed up as Sherlock and Holmes. We went to a pub, and some great stories there. We went to a pub and just were welcomed by these blokes that took good care of us that night. And it was just a phenomenal trip. So as I said, that's when the love affair really began with me and the United Kingdom and the wrestling fans and the people over there in the UK.
Yeah,
just
love it.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's heartwarming to know that that's the sort of reaction you had to it. That's brilliant. So you mentioned sort of briefly earlier there that you've got a new action figure available. I believe it's available now.
Did I mention that? Did I mention that?
That's the one.
And folks, this is honestly, this is so heartfelt for me, because when I left in 1993, I just missed when they had action figures for superstars, but they weren't doing the announce team. And shortly after I left, that's when they started doing everybody. Gene had a couple. They did Bobby and Gorilla, Jesse, and everybody had an action figure. It's been 30 plus years in the making, and for it to finally happen. And I've had people approach me prior to this, because there's independent people that do these things.
Yeah,
but it was just never something that they either just didn't seem reputable, or it wasn't anything that was going to be on a mass scale where you could do it. And Hastel Toy, if you guys are familiar with them, they do a phenomenal job. And it's of course they're in business to do well, to make a profit. But what they've done, I think, for a lot of the superstars, a lot of the wrestlers, maybe they weren't even with the WWE, but were very well known, and to this day, making these figures and getting them out there is phenomenal. And when you go to their website, hasteltoy.com, and that's with two T's, HASTTEL toy.com, there's all of these people that that were big. You hear their name, you go, oh God, yes. But you just know you don't hear that much about them. So they've kind of brought those figures literally to life for people, and just made great figures for people who love to collect these, or just because they were a fan of that wrestler, and now you can get them. And I am absolutely thrilled with it. They did a great job. And at the same time, also my great friend, his lordship, you see it back here. They did one of him as well. And they did, there's an announce team one coming up where we're in our tuxedos with the headsets that are going to be coming out pretty soon. But
that's awesome.
You can also get his lordship as well. So,
is it true you were quite influential in Alfred's figure being made as well?
Well, Mitch, who's with the company there, when he first approached me about it, and I don't know how it all came down. I don't know if he had ideas about doing his lordship, but yeah, I said, well, is there one of Alfred? Because I'd never heard of that. He said, well, I had been trying to get in touch with his family, and I knew that Kirsten, who's Alfred's son, he's got a daughter, Candace, but and they were able to track him down. We got the phone number, and the next thing I knew, he's telling me, "Yeah, we're doing it." And actually they moved so quickly with it that it came out at the exact same time. So both of those molds or whatever they call them were delivered. And I think initially they were just going to do, because if you look at these, you see this is kind of the standard uniform that we would wear, and the detail on this is pretty incredible. But I had the blue blazer, and then and usually khakis, but also the we had WWF ties that we had a collection of them. God, I wish I would have saved them. I have one, but I probably had 10 and they were different colors, cranberry and blue, because Vince was every color of the rainbow of stuff. And we had these blazers we had a light blue one. We had a gray one. I had a cranberry one. Gino loved that one. Gorilla loved that color. He used to wear that. He would wear that all the time. But me, I thought, I'm the news guy. My standard was the blue blazer, which I have one. I did save one with the original patch. So I had been talking to Mitch and about the blazer, and I said, that'd be cool if, remember what made it official was the WWF logo on it. Well, they couldn't put the WWF logo on it, but what they did was they put their G, which is, I guess, for gimmicks, is kind of a light thing on that, but they made it the same orange, and it has like a patch on the blazer. So that's really cool. There's the little things, the details that they put in with it. So so that was what they were going to do initially. And then when they did the Alfred figure, they started thinking about announcer team, because you guys know that Alfred and I, at least over there in the UK, were well known as the commentary guys. Mm-hmm. And the next thing I know, he calls me and says, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to do another one, which it's going to be the announced team, and we're going to do." And I've seen the prototypes, and they're great. We have the tuxedos on with the headsets, like we used to wear, and they're supposed to come out, I don't know, in the next 6 months or so, and people can buy them as a duo. So this is the one, because of the event center. A lot of folks know me from that, and I did a lot of backstage stuff with the blazer, and so it's all official. But it's great. They did a great job, and I'm so happy that his lordship is out as well, because he certainly deserved one, and is in the Hall of Fame. But I wish he would have been inducted as an individual, the way you're supposed to be inducted, and had family on the stage. They did it kind of a way where they had the committee put him in. Yeah. But anyway, it's a great honor that his lordship is a part of it, and I miss him every day. He was one of my greatest friends, and I would have never made it through the early days of the WWE if it wasn't for him, and of course Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah, no, absolute legends. I mean, you mentioned before, you touched on Coliseum video. Like I pretty much grew up on those Coliseum VHS tapes. As we were treated to some very interesting segments on there. Some of them very kind of chaotic, I would say. What are some of your best memories from all the crazy stuff that you guys kind of got up to?
Well, I tell the story when those Coliseum videos came out, and they were known for other videos at the time. Mm-hmm. And they approached Vince and his promotional people and said, "We want to do these wrestling videos." And you have to think back at the time when this was, they did have, the Blockbuster was out, that kind of those shops, the video stores, but it wasn't, nobody else was doing this. And I think initially I thought, well, how's it going to go? Well, I don't know what kind of a deal they made with them, but I think they said, okay, let's do some and see what happens. And because I lived in Stamford, Connecticut, which is where we were based, headquarters, and Alfred lived there as well. We were there basically as house announcers. That's where I did the event center every day to localize the markets. And that was another thing with the UK, is that I was one of the first to be able to do that. and tell people, this is coming to Manchester, this is going whatever. And anyway, they said, so let Mooney and Hayes do it. Let them just do wraparounds, and we'll have these dark matches that people don't get to see on television, and we'll put them on these tapes. So they didn't really know what the hell to do with it. And they gave us a producer. Kevin Granith was the producer. And we would just come up with a theme, whatever the theme was. Let's say there was going to be some tugboat matches featured on it. And we'd come up with some, sailing ship theme. We'd go into the prop closet and grab things. We did, one time Andre used to travel around in its van. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but Andre didn't like to fly. So they got this van. And if you remember the ones that it had kind of a hood they put on the top of them. And they got one of those. So we had some headroom in there, and they put this gigantic captain's chair. They mounted in the center of this van. And Tim White, who was, I'm sure you've heard of him, but he was a well-known referee, but his job was to be the assistant for Andre and driver. And he would drive him to all these events where within a certain area where they didn't have to fly across the country, Andre would do it then. But if it was just, say, the Northeast area they were doing, he would drive. Anyway, they were in town, and we decided we're going to borrow the van and go like we were on our way to the warehouse or the event or wherever we were going. And so we just hijacked the van for the day, got a couple of cameramen and another chase car, and we just went out driving and would just come up with these ideas to, the thing breaks down and we're pulled over on the side of the road and Alfred is underneath the this is just coming back to me, but we were to work on the engine, and I remember he was underneath and we had the camera up above me, and I'm supposed to hand him a wrench, and I dropped the wrench and it smacked him in the forehead. And Alfred, as you may know, but Alfred was a gentleman. And I never heard him say an expletive ever in the years that I knew him. Never, no. And you just heard him say, "Drat, Mooney, you clumsy oaf." And it did, give him a little nick on the forehead. Just added another scar to that forehead. But I just remember, he should have cursed me up and down, but that was as bad as he would do. You clumsy oaf. So, but we would just go for a long time. I don't know how many tapes we did before it changed, but that's how we did them. We didn't really, they weren't really scripted. We would just go and grab props and then go into the studio and just, take off. Just how many we got to do and what match are we going to? And we would just figure out a way because we were good at going. We worked really well together. And so anyway, these things took off. The tapes took off, as you guys know, not just here in the States. I mean, they couldn't keep them on the shelves in these Blockbusters, and a lot of people owned private stores, but also over there. As I said, that I know that was one of the only ways a lot of people could see these matches, because you go to the video store and rent them, because I think at the time Sky TV was a subscription and you had to pay for it.
Yeah, it was expensive, right? As well. We didn't have it, so we used to go to the local video store and just rent this. Oh, they've got a new tape in, and that's how I used to see it. Yeah.
So they all of a sudden they're going, my God, these are taking off. They're making a lot of money off these things. So suddenly our budgets started going up, and the productions we did were a lot more involved. As if you remember, the one we did with Star Trek, where we did everything with green screen, way ahead of our time, right? We were with green screen, and put Alfred on the planet. Remember, he's trying to get the thing to beam him up, and he did his Scottish imitation, beam me up, Scotty, and it was so much fun. I got to do a really bad William Shatner imitation as Captain Kirk, and we did. Then things started getting really involved. We did the one where everything was on fire, and they had the set with all smoke and everything. And there was one part where I was supposed to set this trash can on fire, and it almost got out of control. or as I go through the whole thing and I'm sweating by the time I'm just drenched because the matches are so hot. But they just kept getting more and more involved. But I wish I should have found out how many we did, but it was quite a few of those Coliseum videos. And I know people to this day, I've got a few in the garage in a box somewhere. I should get them out. But we had a blast. We had a blast doing them. We really did. It was great. And then, of course, we did commentary for them as well. So it was, it was fun.
Just crazy pieces on there.
Yeah.
So obviously, with so many big personalities around, I just wondered, did Vince ever try and sort of push you to be more over the top as an on-screen character, or did he just let you sort of do your thing?
Well, Vince was very protective of my gimmick, I guess you'd call it, but he wanted me to be a very straight news reader, news type person, because it added credibility to what we did. So I was very much, he wanted to make sure that, I was always supposed to have this kind of, I can't believe what's happening and I'm actually witnessing this, but I'm going to give it to you the way I'm seeing it, which was fun in itself. Because I was Marilyn and the Munsters, the kind of the normal person amongst this crazy world that I'm trying to navigate. And he was very protective of that. And he would pull me aside, he'd come over to the studio when he would come over every week to shoot things. And he was he was great about telling me, this is your thing. And I never forgot that. And also he was very adamant about the boys not roughing me up, or he would get pissed if somebody, it was one thing he could, somebody could grab your collar, or something by the lapels, but to actually shake me around or do that, you can't do that to Mooney. He's this credible journalist. So in that sense, he was very protective of what I did, and as long as it was within, I didn't, Gene was a whole different story. Gene was, Gene Okerlund, and he would just go off. And if you ever look at his interviews, he'd have these kind of inside jokes that he had with the boys. And that was Gene. And he was a master at that. The look, the timing, the pauses, and I learned a tremendous amount from him. But I knew I could never be Gene Okerlund. I didn't have the desire to be Gene Okerlund, but I learned a lot of things that I could use the same thing. I learned to do the pauses, the looks, but it was my way. But all of that was from Gene. And the other thing, Gene, I remember one time he told me early on, sitting in the locker room, because there were a lot of times we had hours sitting there. And the one big lesson to me, he said, listen. Always look for that place, because you've got to be able to help them when there's times, because all that stuff, for the most part, even when it was taped, it was basically taped to live tape, because we're going to redo them unless it was a disaster. And if you ever look back at some of those interviews with Gene, no matter what happened, he found a way to get it back on track. And that was our job. So I learned a tremendous amount from him. And there was never really a time with Vince where he said, what the hell are you doing? Or don't, I don't want you to do that. And I was trying to think back, because people had asked me, did they really go over these interviews with you? And did make sure you hit this and hit this? And I don't remember us ever rehearsing. It would be, okay, Bobby's going to talk, Mr. Perfect's going to then get it to Kurt, and then whoever else would, if let's say there was three people, or if it was just the two of them, and I'd have an idea of the storyline, and then it was go. So as I've said before, the biggest thing for me is don't screw it up. You don't want to be the person that blows that interview. So there was a lot of pressure that way, because you're basically the mic stand. That's what your job is to make sure everything gets through there. And I mentioned Kurt because Kurt was a master, I'm sure you've heard of, ribs.
Yes.
And he could be brutal. And he loved to mess with you. And he would do things where I remember it was a a team, one of the pay-per-views, and I had 5 guys I had to get to with the microphone, and he was one of the guys in there. And so you have to be able to make sure you maneuver that thing around and you're not standing in front of somebody. And I got pretty good at that. But he would do something where as you start to go over, he'd step on your foot. So you can't get over it. Just to, and he just to reach over it, just look at him. One time he always used to chew the gum. Mm-hmm. And I remember at one of the pay-per-views, I had interviewed him and he'd put his arm around me, which was kind of unusual. He didn't really ever do that. And I just didn't think about it. And that was early on in the night and the interviews. And I did the whole pay-per-view with a wad of gum on my shoulder that he had taken out of his mouth and stuck on my shoulder. That was just the kind of stuff that he would do to you. But it was a blast. And I just think back of all the different situations that I got to be involved in between, of course, all the event centers, but those pay-per-views, those live pay-per-views, and then Saturday night's main event. It was just a great ride. It really was.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love the stuff with Kurt and with Bobby Heenan. I mean, we've just seen, WWE just made their Raw debut on Netflix. You were a massive part of the very first episode, obviously with Bobby trying to sneak into the arena and things like that. How do you kind of reflect now, seeing where Raw's got to today with obviously a huge global platform on Netflix, obviously being a part of the very first episode?
Well, what an evolution it's been. You think about it, because Primetime was this great show for many, many years with Bobby and Gorilla, and of course, to me, they're one of the greatest announced teams ever in wrestling, because they were just magic together. They were a perfect mix of Bobby being the arrogant, smart ass bully until he got too far, and Gorilla could smack him down in a second with one word, and it just worked perfectly. And they were just so creative. The two of them. I don't think Gorilla gets enough credit for what he would come up with. We described these body parts that people had never heard of. I'm sure that that scalpulum has been dislocated or whatever. He used to come up with and he'd be like, okay, I guess that's part of the human body. I'm sure if I looked it up, but he was a very intelligent guy, and then of course Bobby with the comments that he used to have and what he got away with. I mean, there's no way he could do it today, but no. Oh my God, the stuff that he would say, and it never stopped. Bobby was the same off camera too. He was like that everywhere we went. If you went into a fast food place, he had something to say to somebody behind the counter. It's just, and Gene was too. Gene was the same way. Those guys were, I always said that if they wouldn't have ended up in professional wrestling, they would have either been tremendous character actors or comedians, because their timing and the delivery they had was as good as any successful comedian in the world. I put them right up there with them. They're so good.
Yeah, 100%. Did you watch the debut of Raw on Netflix? To see obviously how, maybe not how far it's come, but the difference obviously with you being a part of that very first episode. Yeah,
and I remember at the time that, I knew it was a big deal because it was a new show, but I had no idea if it was going to take off or people were going to catch on to it. It was a unique concept because it was a smaller arena. They jammed it to the rafters. The seating, Vince wanted seating as close to the ring as it could be, and that was a perfect arena, that hall that we did it in at the Manhattan Center, because the seats were very steep, and they were right over, and that you could just feel the electricity in there. And I remember that first night, that was so much fun because I got to work with Bobby as when he dressed up in all the different outfits, the old lady, the Hasid Jewish guy looking for his nephew, and just what he did. And that was at the same time too. That wasn't scripted stuff. They just told me that I'd worked with Bobby enough to know, just go with him. I knew the premise. He's not supposed to get in. and I am the on the street reporter, not necessarily stopping him, but trying to ask him, what are you doing? And then uncovering who he is. And I didn't know at the time that it was going to turn into what it has. And I'm honored that I was the first person ever seen, the first frame of that show. And I guess it makes it a trivia question, but other than that, it's just amazing. And they brought me back for the 2000 episode. And then I did the 25th anniversary. I did the pre-special, but the station I was working for, they invited me for the 25th live show, and I couldn't go. They wouldn't let me go out of my contract. So, but I did do a pre-show with where I'm in the warehouse. I don't know if folks remember that, but it's they should check it out. It's one of my favorite things I ever got to do with Peter. What's his name?
Rosenberg.
Rosenberg, yeah. And we worked really well together. And that episode, I've seen it on YouTube. They have 250,000 views of that thing, but it was one of my favorite bits that I had done since I'd been with the WWE. And I was convinced, I'm like, they got to bring me back for do a warehouse show. This is gold. The whole premise was that Sean Mooney's been locked in this warehouse for 25 years, and he's just dying for company. And he knows all the ins and outs, where everything's hidden. But they ended up doing it, but they did it in-house, and it was just didn't last very long. But that stands out. I hope folks should check that out on YouTube, because we had a lot of fun. Yeah. And I see the comments on there. There are people saying, yeah, they even said that. They got to have a show of this. But maybe someday. I think Mooney's still there. He's still locked in the in the warehouse with Ian, his the twin brother.
Obviously, you mentioned making a few appearances over the years. So I just wondered, with the likes of Saturday Night Main Event sort of making a comeback, would you consider other appearances in the future?
I see what I've seen them do.
Yeah,
what I've seen them do so far is they just have the guys in the crowd. I know that Jesse's back, which I think is pretty cool, because he was always one of my favorites. I thought that it was unfortunate there were difficulties early on there and stuff with Vince, with him and the company. But I thought, I was never a huge fan of Vince doing play-by-play with anyone else. But I thought with Jesse, they worked really well together, because Jesse would say stuff to Vince and say things to Vince that everybody wanted to say. That he was McMahon, and he could just get away with it, and they worked really well together. So I missed when Jesse left. So it's cool to see him back in front of a microphone, and I hope that that keeps going. But it's really cool to see how it's continued on. And you've seen me. They brought me back, and I've done interviews for a lot of the documentaries they've done. But who knows? I'm 65 now, but I'm still live in front of a camera every day, and would love to do more. So you never know.
Yeah, never say no.
I would love to do it, and I'd love to go. I'd love to go over to the UK more often. So
yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you. Looking forward to seeing you when you come over. So obviously you did decide to leave WWE in 1993. We were just about to kind of enter a whole new level of kind of cartoony characters. You just had Doink coming at that point, and before we knew it, we had dentists and plumbers and magicians and every other occupation you could imagine. What did you kind of make of the direction the company was headed at the time that you left?
Yeah, if people remember that period of time, it was not a great time for the WWF at the time, and professional wrestling then. Before, it was before it peaked again with the WCW and the 83 weeks and all that.
Yeah,
but it wasn't so much with me of thinking I can't. This is a sinking ship or something. I really loved my time there. Since I've left, I've never said anything bad about the company. I credit Vince McMahon for everything I learned in broadcasting and giving me the opportunity. I learned so much there because I had the chance to do so many different things. I did studio work with the event center stuff that I would be there 4 days a week doing these local events, customizing everything. I got the chance to do the Coliseum videos where I got to, play all these different characters. I got to do the backstage interviews. I was on network television doing Saturday Night's Main Event, which was the same time period that Saturday Night Live was on, which is a huge show over here, and especially at the time. So I had so many great opportunities. I didn't leave with bad feelings. I actually had a meeting with Vince and told him it was just the time other opportunities were coming up. And I was thinking, okay, am I going to do this for the rest of my career, or do I want to try and do some other things?
Yeah.
As I look back, I wish I should have stayed longer. I think that I would have enjoyed it. But things played out that way, and it was a very, very amicable break between us. And Vince, I stayed for a little longer until they make that transition before WrestleMania. I think I did the WrestleMania show even before I left, and so it was very good. So it's too bad everything else was going on. Remember, the steroid trial was looming, all this stuff was going on. So it was just not a great time, and it took a few years until they broke through. The WCW was up on top for a long time, but then when they had The Rock come in and Stone Cold, that changed the world again, and that was another tremendous era. I think it was lightning in a bottle for me that I came along at the perfect time. I mean, where they were just cresting that wave. I got there in '88, and the Hulkster was on fire. The superstars were just becoming more and more popular. The house shows were going crazy. And for that 5 years, I still to this day think it was the greatest, if not the greatest, but certainly one of the greatest eras in professional wrestling. And I think the second one, and people will want to argue with it either way, but when, Stone Cold and The Rock, and, it became that era that, folks fondly remember, DX and all that. So, yeah, it was just time for me. I was young and stupid, but it was. Yeah.
But I believe you also worked with NWA some years later. I'm just curious sort of how that came about, and did anything sort of surprise you about the sort of the modern business after having such time away?
Well, I really got back into it when I started the podcast with Prime Time with Sean Mooney, and it originally started with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and I was approached after I made that appearance about doing the podcast, and I thought, like, what the heck? I mean, why? I don't know if anybody want to hear from me. And I thought, well, maybe if I had somebody else with me too that could tell stories from the other side in the ring. And then I contacted Hacksaw and hounded him for a while to try to talk him into it, and he finally agreed to do it. And he stayed with the podcast for about 20 episodes. I think he was with me, and then after that, he said, because Hacksaw, he's till this day, he does all these appearances. It was just very difficult, even once a week, to get him to sit down for a couple of hours. So he said, I can't keep doing it. And so I said, well, what the hell? I'll just see what I can do. And I said, I'll just start bringing in guests every week. And we ended up doing about 200 episodes before it just got to the point where I had contacted people to come on who just didn't want to be on a podcast, or they were no longer with us. And so, but I did about 200 episodes there, and so that got me out there again, and I started hearing from a lot of people, and that's how that happened with the NWA. And Billy Corgan, that was his thing, and he had been a fan, had remembered me from back in the years, and wanted to see if I wanted to come in and do some stuff. So it wasn't, I didn't do that much material with them. I think I only went to 2 different tapings with them. And then they changed everything that they were doing. It was difficult for me to go because was living in Arizona and they were, taping in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But it was a really great experience because, Nick Aldis and I have become very good friends, and I love Nick. And I always thought that he was such a great talent and could not believe that the WWE hadn't scooped him up and he hadn't had this tremendous run. So, and I know it was part of his influence that he had them bring me in, and also I had done something right before the AEW started. He had Cody called me and said, "You come and do an interview with Nick for that pay-per-view they did."
Yeah.
So that's how that all happened. But I got to meet a lot of the guys that have since gone on and done well with the WWE. So, it was fun, but it was just not practical for what I was doing. I was still doing 5 shows a week, or 5 nights a week in the news, 4 shows a day. So it was, I just couldn't get away to do stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful they gave me a chance because it was fun to go back and I got to do some, type interviews. And Nick and I got to do some stuff together. And like I said, I got to meet some of these other guys that were up and comers who have since, done very well in professional wrestling. So we need outfits like that. When you can't just have the WWE, you need these other outfits because it keeps that competition going. It keeps this pool of talent coming through with AEW and, TNA and all these other groups that are still out there, NWA. So that's when the business is healthy, when you see some of these, a lot of these other shows taking place. And I'm sure it's the same in the UK. It's all one big giant family when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sean, over 4 decades in front of the camera, from MLB to WWE to being a news anchor, what's the most important thing you've learned throughout your career?
Everything's a work. Life is wrestling. Life is wrestling. I learned that one of the most valuable experiences of my life was being involved in professional wrestling, and of course, the honor of being with the best one, with the best organization, the WWE. But I learned so much about life through people like Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund and many of the superstars, Randy Savage, I was close to. And I just learned that it's, the psychology of life, that the greatest professional wrestlers are the ones who understand how people think and what gets them to react emotionally and to stories. And I've learned that everybody's got a shtick. Everything in entertainment, everybody has a shtick. Everybody's got a gimmick, and whatever it is, how it works. You've seen that. You see that even today. I mean, Joe Rogan's got a shtick. He's one of the most successful podcasters in the world. They all have a shtick, and that's how it works. I've learned that life is wrestling, and it's saved me many times. It's gotten me through because you understand how it works. You just how does this storyline play out? Because we've seen it. Which one is this? The one with because it mimics life, and it always has. And who knew that that's the way it is? And if people would tell me about news, what's the difference? I say, well, at least professional wrestling realizes it's entertainment. News keeps trying to fool everybody, and it's not. It's not. The minute they started selling commercials, it was over. That's when Edward R. Murrow was around and Cronkite. Okay, so that's what I've learned. Life.
I love that. The business meeting and work going to be very different tomorrow when I start thinking of it with a wrestling lens.
Everybody's got a gimmick. Just got to figure out what it is, and once you do, you know that person pretty well. Are you a heel or are you a baby face? Okay, which one are you?
Yeah, I might turn heel tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
There you go. And isn't that the most fun? Isn't that the most fun
Yeah.
being a heel? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Alfred used to
100%.
tell me, people don't realize with Alfred, besides the fact that he was, most people are surprised what a tremendous world-class athlete he was. I mean, he was a professional soccer player. He was a judo champion. He was a tremendous worker. And best of all, he was a phenomenal heel. And most of what people saw here in the States and with the WWE, Alfred was always a baby face. But what is awesome, though, if you listen to the matches that we did together, he would be a heel. He would get on me because you need that balance. And I used to love it because any other time it was two baby faces, basically, right?
Yeah.
But when we did play-by-play, if you look at that, he got to be a heel, and I just loved it. I adored him. And I just wish more people, if they go back in the archives, because if you remember, he played the arrogant snob Englishman with his tea, and he could just go. I mean, he just could dish it out. And I know he always missed that. He always loved being the heel, as with most of them do. All of the boys love the chance to be a heel. It's just the most fun. That's like when they had Ian. Remember, I had the twin for a short time because they needed somebody to host Spotlight. And Bruce Pritchard came up with the idea because they instead of having to hire somebody, we'll let Mooney do it, but give him a twin. And so I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. I get to be a heel. I could be Ian the heel. I had this vision of Sean Mooney doing the event center and Ian coming up behind him with a guitar and smashing him over the head and then taking over the event center. And I just remember Bruce looking at me like, no, that's not going to work. So it didn't make any sense to me. How could he be a baby face? Come on. So I never got my chance to really take off with Ian, but I had plans. Boy, did I.
Oh, Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Just one more time for everyone who's watching or listening. For the Love of Wrestling, happening on the 15th and 16th of February in Manchester. Ric Flair, Lex Luger, Jake the Snake, Sting, Mick Foley, so many more. Prop builds, including the event center. And most importantly, Sean Mooney is going to be there. Honestly, absolute honor. Before we let you go, can you just let everyone know where they can get, obviously, your action figure and Lord Alfred Hayes?
You can get it. They did it. Like I said, they did a great job. And just go to hasteltoy.com. That's two T's in Hastel, HASTTEL toy.com. And if you bring these, I'm sure that they will let me sign them, I would think. So I hope that folks grab them because they're not making that many of them. I don't imagine. I'm realistic about all this. I know I'm kind of a rare find, but that's what makes it awesome. There's only going to be so many, and and they sent me a bunch, so I'm really happy that I've got these. I can show them off to my family and friends. Because come on, how many do you have? Do you have an action figure?
We haven't got an action figure.
Yeah, you got an action figure. I got an action figure. His lordship finally has an action figure, and it's really awesome. And and I don't know. I've been toying with the idea of bringing back Primetime Mooney or Primetime Wrestling with Sean Mooney, and I'd love to hear from folks, hear what they have to say about it, especially all my friends in the UK. And if you would like to email me, you can email me directly at primetimemooney@gmail.com. That's primetimemooney@gmail.com. Real easy. And I'd love to hear from you. And I keep sending these things over to me. They send them out, I send them back. So, but I'm really looking forward. I hope that folks will come out. And I'd love to hear your stories about your Coliseum home videos and watching Sky TV. And if you remember when we were there, I'm really looking forward to hearing those stories because I never really got the chance to do it. And now I'm coming over and I can't wait to see you.